In 789, a sail appeared on the horizon near Portland, south of Wessex. The locals hardly care about sailing because their lives are focused on fishing and livelihoods from the sea. Others make a living from fertile agricultural land far off the coast. After a while, the crew of the ship landed unhindered. The locals are no stranger to newcomers or people like them, because in the past they had frequently visited Western Saxons' ports. They came to sell goods or exchange a small fraction of the wealth in Wessex, a rich land under the rule of King Offa of Mercia. Wessex has long profited from the network of trade across the continent of the Franks and their northern clients in Frisia. The newcomers this time, however, came from further north, outside the traditional trade network for centuries. Although their language is very strange, the locals can still understand some of it, suggesting a common origin from the Germanic past of the migratory period a few centuries ago. Immediately, however, I realized these men weren't merchants. Probably, a solid head-shaped ship's nose revealed this. Besides, the weapons and armor they're carrying is a clear sign. These people don't come as merchants, they come as pirates. This is the beginning of a wave of invasion and looting by the Vikings, a group of people from the northern icy lands who have embarked on a journey in search of new lands and wealth. This first appearance marks an important historic turning point in shaping the future of this land and the interaction between the Vikings and the locals. The events of 789 in Portland, in the southern Wessex of England, were a major historical event, marking the first appearance of Scandinavian pirates on the coast of England. Although the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle does not give much detail about the event, its consequences are clear. By the end of the day, the local officials had come down under the sand to exchange with them, but were found dead on the beach and beaten down by pirates. These pirates, be they Norwegians or Danes, carried out a robbery and assault in Portland, stealing valuables. They're not merchants, they're brutals wearing weapons and armor, with the characteristic solid head-shaped arrow. Only a few years later, in 793, the pirates returned, attacking the Lindisfarne monastery, the sacred site of Christianity in northern England. This attack caused great horror because the pirates were pagans, showing disrespect for the sanctuary and attacking Christian places of worship. They have captured the monks as slaves and robbed any valuable property. Anglo-Saxon chronicles record predictions of the Lindisfarne attack, including tornadoes, thunderstorms, and even the appearance of giant dragons. These signs are seen as bad signs, signals of a major event coming. The attack on Lindisfarne marked the beginning of a series of invasions and looting from Scandinavia that lasted for centuries. The Anglo-Saxons, whose history was once oppressed by their descendants, faced a serious threat from the north. King Offa of Mercia, one of the most powerful kings of Western Europe at the time, recognized the threat and set up a defense system along the river to resist pirate attacks. Likewise, Emperor Charlemagne made similar moves, establishing elaborate coast guard stations in his southern and northern estuaries to defend against modern-day Arab and Scandinavian pirates, the more daring. In Aquitaine, the captains of Charlemagne achieved an important victory over the first group of pirates from the north in 799. They executed many pirates on the coast, sending a powerful message to other invaders. These actions demonstrate the determination of the European kingdoms to defend their territories. Meanwhile, the tribes that once occupied the lands of the Western Roman Empire settled and integrated into larger states. They accepted the Roman religion and formed major alliances such as the Carolingian Empire on the mainland and Mercia's sovereignty in southern England. This consolidation helps create a more stable political foundation. Since about 675, Europe has made considerable progress in prosperity. The economic and political sectors have developed rapidly, leading to centralization and strong economic growth. These advances helped Europe to recover from the collapse of the Western Roman Empire. By 800, Europe had somewhat recovered from historical turmoil. Charlemagne and other leaders laid the foundations of the medieval European system, creating the legal and administrative foundations that would later affect the development of the continent. In the early 8th century, Europe's trading system changed dramatically. From the commodity exchange system, the economy has shifted to monetary transactions and expanded trade networks, linking lands from the northern border to the southern coast of Europe. Thanks to this, items like salt, cloth, and goods from different regions are easily circulated. Historical and archaeological records show a marked increase in the number of trading points during this period. Along with economic growth, European lords and peasants accepted the Christian faith of the Romans. This led to a change in architecture, with churches and public buildings designed in Roman style, taking advantage of ancient monuments. Some of the earliest church houses built in the 8th century, such as the Canterbury Cathedral in England, are evidence of the Christian reception of the local population. The shift in perception of the sea and Germanic mythology is also a remarkable aspect. The sea was still considered a sacred place, but with the conversion to Christianity, the Germanic sea gods were replaced by spiritual and demonic entities in the Christian tradition. Fear of the sea and its souls increased in the 8th century. Frisia, conquered by the Franks in the 8th century, played an important role in connecting Scandinavia and Europe. Thanks to the geographical location and the favourable river system, the Frisians became the centre of trade between the north and the south. Historical documentation records that Frisia has served as an important trading centre, with merchant ships carrying goods from Scandinavia travelling across Europe. The Frisians, albeit relatives to the Danes, do not have the same old shipbuilding tradition as the Scandinavians. They use hawks and cogs to travel over sea and river, but they're not comparable to the northern clinkers. These ships, although efficient for domestic transport, could not meet the need to cross as far as Scandinavian ships. Moreover, it was thanks to the hawks and cogs that the Frisians succeeded in becoming a trading hub between Europe and Scandinavia. These ships, although not as advanced as the northern clinkers, still play an important role in trade. At the time of the invasion of Portland in 789, the most important trading centre in Nordic Europe was the town of Frisian-Dorestad. It's an important trade junction between old and new roads, serving as a hub for cross-continental trade. Dorestad has close links with the port of Hamich in Wessex, now Southampton, and Quentovich in Flanders. Though not close to strong military bases, these centres are attractive for pirates. This shows the extensive and complex connectivity of the medieval commercial network. The Scandinavians, with their ability and passion for the sea, have demonstrated their strength and skill through archaeological evidence, language, and literature. They've developed boats that are suitable for easy navigation at sea. For example, the longboats built by clinker woodworking have become symbols of Scandinavian naval power. The people of Francia and Britain are about to realise that prosperity can become a danger. About 300 years ago, their ancestors harassed the Roman world, causing the empire to collapse and rebuild in their own way. Now they face the barbarians from the north, bringing a new threat. Pirates from the north have taken advantage of the commercial network to carry out the attacks, causing severe consequences for the target areas. These attacks have disrupted the balance of power that was fragile in the Middle Ages. The collapse of the great nations began when the two great rulers disappeared, leading to political and social instability. Even before the collapse occurred, a new enemy emerged from the North Sea, threatening the security of the coastal areas. Instead of attacking big nations with strong resilience, pirates tend to choose easier targets. By the end of the 7th century, the Orkney and Shetland Islands were attacked and became pirate bases. This shows the increasing penetration of Scandinavians into Anglo-Saxon lands and surrounding areas. At the time of the invasion of Portland in 789, the most important trading centre in Nordic Europe was the town of Frisian-Dorestad. It's an important trade junction between old and new roads, serving as a hub for cross-continental trade. Dorestad has close links with the port of Hamwich in Wessex, now Southampton, and Quentovich in Flanders. Though not close to strong military bases, these centres are attractive for pirates. This shows the extensive and complex connectivity of the medieval commercial network. The Scandinavians, with their ability and passion for the sea, have demonstrated their strength and skill through archaeological evidence, language, and literature. They've developed boats that are suitable for easy navigation at sea. For example, the longboats built by clinker woodworking have become symbols of Scandinavian naval power. The people of Francia and Britain are about to realise that prosperity can become a danger. About 300 years ago, their ancestors harassed the Roman world, causing the empire to collapse and rebuild in their own way. Now, they face the barbarians from the north, bringing a new threat. Pirates from the north have taken advantage of the commercial network to carry out the attacks, causing severe consequences for the target areas. These attacks have disrupted the balance of power that was fragile in the Middle Ages. The collapse of the great nations began when the two great rulers disappeared, leading to political and social instability. Even before the collapse occurred, a new enemy emerged from the North Sea, threatening the security of the coastal areas. Instead of attacking big nations with strong resilience, pirates tend to choose easier targets. By the end of the 7th century, the Orkney and Shetland Islands were attacked and became pirate bases. This shows the increasing penetration of Scandinavians into Anglo-Saxon lands and surrounding areas. The Vikings that appeared in Eastern Europe, especially the Vikings who came from Sweden, played an important role in building a new trade network that connected Central Asia with Scandinavia and overcame the Carolingian trade network of the continent. This new trade network connects remote areas such as Central Asia to Scandinavia and gradually surpasses the old shopping centres such as Dublin and Hedeby, two important centres that quickly compete with Franks and Anglo-Saxons' established trading facilities. Longship is a key technology used by the Vikings, considered a living animal, developed through generations of shipbuilders. Before the 8th century, Scandinavians used muscle power to sail. However, when the sails appeared on the Scandinavian ships, possibly due to contact with the Franks and Frisians, this completely changed the way they travelled at sea. Tjangvidi on Gotland provides the earliest evidence of the use of sails on Scandinavian ships, around 690. Longships become great battleships with flexible mobility and the ability to land anywhere. The unique design of the ship fits the natural environment, like fjords and archipelagos of Scandinavian land. The stories of Scandinavian settlers, pirates, and merchants have always been linked to longships. Finally, the story of the Vikings inspired a new generation of research and discovery in the early 20th century. The discovery of the Gokstad in 1881 inspired researchers. In 1904, another discovery of long trains took place near the site of the Gokstad discovery, showing the importance and long-term impact of longship in Scandinavian history and culture. Archaeological discoveries in Scandinavia, such as the Gokstad in 1881, a ship dating back to around 900 CE, attracted audiences from San Francisco to Paris. However, it was the excavation of the new site in 1904 that contributed most to our understanding of longships, and ultimately had a major influence on the modern world. We know about it as the Oseberg, and the point of our story is that this is the earliest intact ship ever discovered, which may have been built about a century before the Gokstad. Unlike other sites, the original Oseberg tomb was not associated with the burial of ancient kings. However, as soon as the sophisticated carved ship's tail appears from his grave, it's clear that this location will change everything. Immediately, comparisons were made with existing examples of Viking art from smaller archaeological finds, rune-engraved stones, and even carvings on post-Viking church doors. Simply put, these carvings are amazing, created by master craftsmen. They perfectly embody the combination of the animal art style that once dominated the whole of Northern Europe and Eurasia, along with the the long Scandinavian shipbuilding tradition to create something truly special. Carbon radiation methods have shown that the Oseberg was buried around 834 AD, but was probably built about 30 years earlier. This means that the first Viking sailors came from Scandinavia to attack the coasts of Western and Eastern Europe about 100 years before the time of the Gokstad, using ships not so different from the Oseberg. Surprisingly, the ship retained most of its original shape during its long burial underground, despite being partially destroyed by the force of the ground above. This completely prevented the ship's destruction. The tomb thieves seem to have approached the tomb at some point, but fortunately, most of the objects buried alongside the ship are still intact. The findings in the tombs provide more information about the Viking era than any other discovery in history. The fine engravings suggest the way these people lived and the power, the tremendous wealth of the people who were buried. It's definitely a royal tomb, but it's not a king's tomb. The tomb contains two female bodies, a young man and an old man. A young man could be a female slave who was sacrificed alongside an elderly man, similar to the record of the Arab writer Ibn Fadlan about the ceremony of burial on the Volga in the 10th century. While the identity of the elderly woman remains a mystery, many have suggested that she may be a member of the prestigious Yngling dynasty and the ancestor of Norway's first unified king, Harald Fairhair. By 1926, using advanced conservation techniques, a complete reconstruction was completed, leading experts to hypothesize that the Oseberg, instead of being a real warship, could initially be used as a royal yacht for prestigious coastal trips. However, in recent years, this hypothesis has been questioned by new research that suggests that the ship may have been originally constructed differently from the reconstruction and may therefore have been suitable for navigation. It was on similar ships that the Norwegians and Danes first set foot in Western Europe, and the Swedes crossed the river systems in the east. As the years passed and other discoveries began to be made, it was realized that the Oseberg was part of a long tradition of shipbuilding, leading to ships such as the Gokstad and the Tune that were excavated at Oswald in 1867 and dated to around 900 AD. Scandinavian ships have made a distinctive mark in maritime history. Instead of using traditional shipbuildings like the Mediterranean or the Celtic in the northwest, the Scandinavians chose to build clinkers, allowing ships to easily overcome waves and storms in the North Sea. This type of shipbuilding allows the ship to adapt to harsh environments and is safer for the driver. The clinker structure consists of a large tree, usually an oak tree, which forms the backbone of the vessel, along with about 10 to 50 other stems for the rest of the ship. Green, young wood is given priority to retain the flexibility and natural strength of wood. The skilled shipbuilders can do the job quickly, each concentrating on a small part of the whole process based on knowledge passed from generation to generation. The Scandinavian clinkers have had special marks in maritime history. One of the oldest vessels ever found in Norway is the Kvalsund, dating back to around 690, which has similar characteristics to the latter, but it is unclear whether or not it has a sailing wing. By the 8th century, Scandinavian ships had adopted the spine, an important part of the ship's structure, allowing ships to travel further and safer at sea. In the 9th century, the Scandinavian ship reached its highest level of completion. The Oseberg and Kvalsund show the sophistication of shipbuilding, along with sailing to increase the speed of movement. The ship's design has been refined over generations, based on practical testing from safe departure to safe return. The Scandinavians have developed different types of ships to serve various purposes. Larger ships are used to carry cargo, merchants, and explore new lands. The improvements in ship design allowed the Scandinavians to travel across Europe and conquer many territories. The influence of the Scandinavian ships is evident in their invasion of different territories. By the middle of the 9th century, the Carolingian Empire had been fragmented into many opposing nations. The Scandinavians occupied the islands in the north and penetrated the river systems of Ireland and Francia, affecting the development of these regions. Although Scandinavians come from different lands, they are united by the common features of marine life. Their ships, with their flexible design and ability to navigate across the sea, have contributed significantly to the formation of empires and trading systems in European history. Between 800 and the middle of the 9th century, the Scandinavians perfected their shipbuilding techniques to such an extent that no one in Europe could compete with them. The clinker-style ships are designed with curved wooden trunks, allowing them to be flexible and withstand the harsh waves and harsh weather of the northern seas. Scandinavian ships are low cost, easy to build by skilled craftsmen without demanding as much resources as larger ships in the Mediterranean. Clinker technology allows ships to move flexibly, bend on waves without being damaged, allowing them to excel in windy waters. The Scandinavians had complete control of the northern sea routes and the major river routes in Europe. The Viking fleet moves 3 or 4 times faster than on land, allowing them to frequently attack new territories. By the middle of the 9th century, the Scandinavian navy had grown from small fleets to large fleets, possibly up to 100 ships. These fleets are led by famous sea kings, with great power on the sidelines of the kings and lords of the land. These Scandinavian fleets pose a significant threat to different territories across Europe. Scandinavian naval activities have a profound impact on the societies and cultures of the lands they access. The development of the Scandinavian fleet boosted trade, expanded trade, and enriched Scandinavia. These changes have a major impact on the power and social structure of Scandinavia. The age of the Vikings had well and truly begun. Daring raids, such as those conducted by Bjorn Ironside and Hasdin, went as far afield as the Mediterranean. Both Paris and London were attacked unsuccessfully. Dorestad and Hamwich weren't so lucky, the former in particular being decimated year after year. And in the east, Swedish Vikings now having built trading settlements and fortresses along the Volga and the Dnieper rivers, subjugating and incorporating the local Slavs into their vast economic network, in the process raided as far south as the eastern Roman capital of Constantinople, trying their luck in 860 against a weakly defended northern part of the great city, but ultimately being driven back by a 9th century weapon of mass destruction developed during the Byzantines' apocalyptic struggle with the Caliphate during the previous centuries. This was one of the most effective sea powers that the Scandinavians had ever come up against, ultimately sparking off a centuries-long obsession with the metropolis they knew as Mikkelgard. This was an obsession which would eventually see the Vikings of the East and their increasingly important Slavic subjects incorporated into the cultural sphere of the Eastern Romans. As the years went by, more and more Swedes, often known as Varangians, would shift their operations from the trade route along the Volga into the Caspian Sea, Khanty, and look towards the collection of waterways that eventually fed into the Dnieper and on into the Black Sea, and the ever-present allure of the great city of Constantinople. As the century progressed, the East would provide an entirely different set of challenges to those encountered in the West. Here lay a land of winding river systems and impassable rapids, rather than storm-ridden open seas like Ireland in the far west. Roman rule and the urban institutions that came with it had never extended into the riverways of Eastern Europe, meaning like the Irish. The Slavic peoples that these Swedish Vikings came into contact with, though just as effective in war individually, were less socially and economically developed than the Franks and the Anglo-Saxons, who could organize themselves into substantial armies and, to a certain extent, had begun to see themselves as successors to Rome's imperial legacy. Though no literary tradition existed to the north of the Black Sea, as was inherited from the Romans in the west, the Scandinavian impact on these lands was just as great. And in time, during the age of Oleg, the Swedish Vikings, now known as the Rus, laid the foundations for a centralized state, a feat never accomplished in Ireland, whose Norse settlers remained divided into numerous economically powerful, yet politically fragile city-states. In the early days of the Vikings, the types of boats that they used to trade and rob were very diverse and highly versatile. These ships do not differ much in the territories occupied by the Scandinavians, such as those found in Oseberg, Gokstad, Ladby, and Hedeby in Denmark. They're boats built by local jarls to assert their power, to transport people and serve all the necessary purposes. At the end of the 9th century, ambitious men used boats like Gokstad to conquer vast lands in Western Europe. Characters like Ivar, the boneless man Halfdan with wide arms, Ubba, the Duke of the Frisians, Guthrum, the King of East England, and Rollo, the pedestrian, became kings in the newly captured lands. The Anglo-Saxon kingdoms have been pushed to the brink of collapse, with only Wessex and other fragments surviving. In France, almost the entire northern coast was occupied. In the east, with the occupation of Kiev, the scattered commercial towns of the Swedish slave trafficking princes began to develop into a centralized state, the Rus state. Many of these sea kings and slave trafficking princes have left their homeland to escape the increasing power of the centrally unified dynasties. And after they left, the power of the kings increased. In Norway, Harald Fairhair was the first king to unify by being relatively flexible to the regional powers. In Denmark, however, a powerful power-centric dynasty emerged a generation later, reluctant to tolerate ambitious Vikings. By the beginning of the 10th century and the arrival of the Old Man Gorm, the era of Danish independent sea kings had come to an end. The concentration of power by the Jelling dynasty in Denmark and Yngling in Norway led to the strict control of local chiefs and the development of a prosperous trade network in Nordic Europe. Commercial centres like Hedeby, Oslo and Lake Malaren provide similar power to Norwegian and Swedish kings. This change has led to a distinct division of ships. The ships began to divide for war or trade purposes. Central dynasties no longer need versatile ships, but rather long and fast ships to fight, or spacious and durable to trade. According to Icelandic authors, such as Snorri Sturluson at the beginning of the 13th century, the policies of power-centric dynasties led to their ancestors migrating to Icelandia. Snorri Sturluson recorded the journey and culture of the Icelandic people, along with the influences of the domination of the central dynasties. By the end of the 9th century, some of the first Scandinavian settlers used boats similar to the Gokstad to travel to distant lands. However, over time, a larger and stronger new type of boat began to be used, called the kanar. Examples of this type of boat have been found in places like Klarstad and Askakar since the late 10th century, but it has been used earlier and became the main type of ship in the new Scandinavian trading system. Not all Scandinavians are Vikings. Most of them are merchants, farmers and settlers. Thanks to their advanced maritime technology, they have changed the existing European trading system and are able to transport loads of up to 40 tons on the canals. This helps them move goods efficiently and go to new lands that Europeans have never discovered before. Seafarers on the Canaries have discovered 2 new lands in the icy waters of the North Atlantic, based on traditional positioning techniques such as observing landmarks, birds and stars. Initially, these lands were only open to Scandinavians, but over time, other communities such as the Frankish and Anglo-Saxons also joined the Scandinavic trading system. Cultural unification, as happened in Normandy, and Danelaw allowed other European residents to eventually use longships and join the Scandinavian trading system. In the process, old shopping centres such as Dorestad, Hamwich and Kintovich gradually gave way to new centres such as Hedeby, Dublin, Rouen and Jorvik. A century later, these centres have become strong points of trade and power. This new trading system not only enables Scandinavians to expand their world, but also creates a period of prosperity and interculturalism. The expansion of the trading system has contributed to the economic development and progress of the Scandinavian communities, while facilitating access to new lands and other vital resources. Over the years, Canary ships have grown in size and technology, in a direction that is becoming bigger and more efficient. Specific evidence is that the Hedeby III was discovered around 1025, suggesting the evolution of the Canary in the 10th and 11th centuries. The silver shortage in the fragmented Abbasid Caliphate in the 10th century affected global trade and paved the way for trade changes. The Russian invasion of Constantinople in 945, led by Igor, was a decisive factor in the new trade agreement with the Byzantine Empire. This agreement shifted the concentration of the Varangian from the Middle East to the Orthodox East, marking a major shift in the Russian relationship with other lands. For the next 50 years, Rus society has undergone a transition from an alliance of loose tribal elders to the largest nation in Europe. Evidence from Byzantine and Muslim documentary sources suggests that the Russians still use longboats in the east, while the Canary boats have become the main means of trade. In the west, Catholicism from Rome spread, with successful missionaries from the beginning of the 9th century. Meanwhile, in the east, the Russians adopted Orthodoxy and Byzantine institutions, changing both their culture and religion. The multi-ethnic transformation of the Russians was evident in the fact that they began to be Slavic in 945, reflecting cultural unification. Similarly, in Ireland and Normandy, Scandinavians have adapted to the local culture and have had similar changes. The continuing relationship between the Russians and Scandinavia is very strong. Scandinavian warriors went to Rus in search of wealth and glory, while Rus sometimes went to Scandinavia to find shelter and strengthen their armies. Cultural and religious influence is also part of this transition. The influence of the Slavic and Byzantine monarchs infiltrated, replaced, or mixed with Scandinavian culture. Meanwhile, the Scandinavians in the West also gradually adopted Catholicism, creating cultural harmony between peoples and lands during this important historical period. Hundreds of thousands of silver coins from Britain and France, taken from the collection of Dengle duties or robbed during this period, proved to be a major shift in trade routes. This has turned Scandinavia and its surroundings into rich and prosperous lands, becoming the focal point of Nordic Europe for the first time in history. Although the majority of Scandinavians are not literate and have to rely on foreign historians, urban institutions and social development have gradually emerged, especially around royal families such as the Danish royal family. Scandinavians have gradually integrated into European culture, changing their social and political structures. Ships became more and more effective in the 10th century, dedicated to battle rather than other purposes. For example, a warship discovered at Hedeby in 1025 demonstrates a change in shipbuilding technology. These ships are sophisticated and efficient, capable of operating in a variety of conditions. By the end of the 9th century, the Carolingian dynasty of France collapsed, leading to the rise of new powers such as the Saxons in eastern France. These political and historical changes have greatly affected the political situation in the region and caused disruption. Henry the Fowler, King of East France, in 934, after victory over the Hungarians, attacked Jutland. The lords of this region must submit, accept conversion and coronation to the King of Germany. This is an important event marking the Eastern French invasion of Scandinavia. In that context, a famous sea king, Gorm the Old, appears and unites the Danes against Henry the Fowler. Gorm protected the land from German influence and controlled the important trading centre of Hedeby, contributing to Denmark's economic strength. Gorm the Old and his son, Harald Bluetooth, have shaped Denmark into the strongest Scandinavian kingdom, a significant development in regional history. Nevertheless, the independent sea kings did not give up and still fought for their power, showing the complexity of the political and military context of the period. In 1935, a farmer on the Danish island of Funun began digging a large hill on his estate and found an important discovery of the land's past. The grotto, formerly thought to be just a natural hill, contains an ancient tomb with many precious artifacts buried by the same powerful sea king more than 1,000 years ago. Results from 2 years of excavations show a series of objects buried with the deceased, including dogs, horses, and sacrifices, along with the impression of an intact longboat, buried by the king's accomplices to take their owners to Valhalla, which the Vikings believed to be their paradise. The longboat is similar in design to the Oseberg and Gokstad ships in Norway, showing a continuation of the shipbuilding tradition of the same period. However, the tomb contains only a few pieces of bone, suggesting that the remaining remains were removed shortly after being buried. This suggests that the tomb has been attacked and the objects in the tomb have been cut into pieces. The event marked the end of the era of the Danish independent king of the sea, reflecting major changes in Scandinavian society in the 9th and 10th centuries. During this time, the Scandinavian sea kings began to adapt to the new geopolitical systems in which they joined, often converting to Christianity as a way to consolidate power and expand their empire. Harald Bluetooth, Gorm's son, is a good example of this change. He has extended his authority to Norway and the Baltic coast, while strengthening trade control in the region. Thus, he built a strong empire and brought Scandinavian domination to the region. Meanwhile, in Eastern Europe, Rus has undergone significant changes. Prince Vladimir converted to Christianity in order to form a marital alliance with the Byzantine Empire, paving the way for the influence of Christianity and Byzantium culture to penetrate the Rus. This also prompted the establishment of the Varangian Guard, a royal guard army in Constantinople, in which many Russian warriors had served. When the Abbasid Caliphate collapsed, the slave trade also declined, leading to the emergence of mercenary forces. For example, during the reconquest of Crete by Emperor Nicephorus Phocas in the 960s, the Rus sailors were the first to land and attack the Arab army waiting on shore. By 975, the independent Scandinavian kingdoms had formed and gained dominance in the region. Kings like Harald Bluetooth, Sven Forkbeard, and Canute the Great built a powerful empire, dominated the northern waters, and established the Great Northern Sea Empire, a glorious era of dragon ships. What do you think about the Viking dragon boat? Is it worthy of being a symbol for them? Please leave your opinion below in the comments section, and don't forget to click the subscribe button to continue exploring ancient history with us. Thank you for your attentive listening. Have a good day.